Welcome to your weekly ticket. The Silence of the Lambs first arrived in American theaters over 30 years ago on February 14th, 1991. Since then, it's one of only 3 films to win the top 5 categories at the Oscars: Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Screenplay. This week, we're joined by Angelica Jade Bastién, critic at Vulture, to talk about the film's legacy. Now, there's a new show about Clarice. Hannibal had his own show for 3 seasons. What do you think keeps drawing people back to these characters?
I think one of the most fascinating things about their dynamic is it brings up issues of gender and power and class especially. And I think that mix of things really entices people. But also Hannibal Lecter is not like a lot of other serial killers we see in pop culture. A big part of who he is deals with a sort of class fantasy because of how exalted his taste is and how refined he is, and how even though he's obviously a serial killer, he has his own weird moral compass. And so you can almost get what's going on and you can kind of like tap into that, even though you're like, yeah, he's a serial killer, but man, that food actually looks good. And also, like,
it does, though.
It does. But also for me, like, one of the reasons I'm probably so enticed by the story is that it has echoes of the Bluebeard fairy tale, which is probably one of my favorite fairy tales and plays on gender and power.
Can you tell us a tiny bit about that?
Oh, of course. It's like one of my favorite things to talk about. But the Bluebeard fairy tale, in essence, is about a very young woman who marries a rich, older man, and it's a French fairy tale. And he's had many, many wives who've kind of disappeared mysteriously. When they get married, he gives her the run of the house and says, "You have the whole house except for this one room." And of course, she looks in the room and it has all his dead wives. So the thing is, with the Bluebeard fairy tale, it brings up really interesting ideas about gender, power, death, desire, all of which exist within Silence of the Lambs.
Well, like Beauty and the Beast, kind of like that?
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast has,
I mean, I'm
like,
sorry
that
for
vibe.
going for like an easy one, Disney, don't go into the West Wing sort of thing. Sorry.
I mean, it does have those vibes. I mean,
Yeah.
A lot of, it's a fairy tale that echoes throughout so much of Western storytelling.
Sure, yeah. So how responsible do you think Silence of the Lambs is for people's fascination in pop culture with serial killers?
So I think definitely Silence of the Lambs was a huge influence on the flux of serial killer movies we ended up seeing throughout the 90s and early aughts. I think that it definitely sparked something in Hollywood and audiences. But I think American audiences, for better or for worse, have long been interested in true crime and serial killers. We're kind of obsessed.
Yeah. I think it's weird. I'm not into it.
I find it both fascinating and repulsive.
There you go. I think that's what most people feel, right?
Yeah.
All right.
It's an interesting mix.
Yeah. So for people that like the dynamic between Clarice and Hannibal, what other characters in films would you recommend? Like, what other films would you recommend that have that sort of dynamic?
So the first thing that pops into my mind is this really great 1987 neo-noir called Black Widow that follows Deborah Winger as a detective who's hunting this con woman's / killer femme fatale played by Teresa Russell. And it brings up a lot of these same dynamics we see in Silence of the Lambs, which came out a few years after that, but it's 2 women. So the dynamics are a little different and it's very rich and really fascinating.
So Silence of the Lambs was the last film to win all 5 of the top 5 Oscar awards. Is there another film that you think deserves that distinction?
Questions like this always crack me up. I'm going to be absolutely 100 with you. I am like the worst critic to ask that question because you couldn't pay me, and I do get paid for this, to give a damn about the Oscars. Like, I don't believe in what they represent. Although, yes, there's definitely films I've loved who've been, The Handmaiden, The Favorite. Those would be like really, that would be amazing to see them win a bunch of Oscars, but that didn't happen. But alas, the Oscars kind of suck, in my opinion.
All right, fair enough. So now let's say that you're in charge of a reboot of Silence of the Lambs or just the entire series. You can cast Hannibal and you can cast Clarice. Who do you pick?
Okay, you're gonna want to set me aflame for this answer, but I sort of don't want them to be rebooted anymore. We've had such definitive performances, especially you have Anthony Hopkins, who I think really embodies how I imagine the character. But then you also have Mads Mikkelsen giving a completely different performance from the TV series Hannibal, which, has a very dedicated following, and I can see why. I'd rather people take inspiration from the dynamics that exist within Clarice and Hannibal rather than rebooting them again. Give them a break. And I'm talking about that Clarice show. I don't know about that. We'll see.
Someone else just wants to do the accent. It's that sweet Southern accent.
I guess that's the choice.
All right, Angelica, it's been great having you. Where can people find you?
You can obviously find me writing for Vulture, as well as on Twitter at Angelica Bastién.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Available to watch on demand is Monster Hunter.
Tracks end here. Definitely Bravo team.
They don't just disappear.
Behind our world, there is another. A world of dangerous and powerful monsters that rule their domain with deadly ferocity. When Lieutenant Artemis and her loyal soldiers are transported from our world to the new one, the unflappable lieutenant receives the shock of her life. In a desperate battle for survival against enormous enemies with incredible powers and unstoppable terrifying attacks, Artemis, played by Mila Jovovich, teams up with a mysterious hunter, played by Tony Jaa, who has found a way to fight back. And available to watch on demand is Supernova.
If you had one wish in the world, what would it be?
I wish this holiday wouldn't end.
So, can you tell that it's gotten worse?
Sam, played by Academy Award winner Colin Firth, and Tusker, played by Stanley Tucci, are partners of 20 years, traveling across England in their old camper van visiting friends, family, and places from their past. Following a life-changing diagnosis, their time together has become more important than ever until secret plans test their love like never before. Alright, well that's it for today, but leave us a comment and let us know what you'll be watching this week. I'm Khail, and I'll see you next time.